Hello and welcome back to Web Design Videos. This lesson is on CSS Shorthand, and what that means is that there are quicker and faster ways to write CSS than you might know about. So let's create a new document here, and I'm going to go through my normal routine of doc type HTML. I'm going to do the HTML language equals English. I'm going to give the head and the title, and this will be shorthand CSS. After the title, I'm going to include the meta tag with the char set equals UTF-8, and then I'm also going to include a style tag because we're going to be using that, and then after the head I'm going to create the body. There we go. And then I'm going to create a div. There we go. And I'm using a div because I would like to just have a plain box there. So let's begin by setting the div style in the style area in the header. And I'd like to begin with just a plain width and height. And the width, let's make this 400 pixels. In CSS, you always have to say what the measurement is, pixels or centimeters or millimeters or whatever. And we're going to give it a height of, let's say, 300 pixels. So this will create a box that is 400 pixels wide and 300 pixels high. We cannot see that, however, until we add some sort of border or background color. So I'd like to do a background color here. Please try to do the same thing yourself if you could. Let's create some RGB here. Let's try maybe something which is light blue. So that means that blue, or the third value, will be the highest, and the others should be fairly high. So let's try 240, 240, 255. That means red is at 240, green is at 240, and blue is at 255. That'll create a light blue color. So we're going to save this, and I'm going to put it into my new folder, the project folder, and I'm going to call this shorthand. There we go. So then I'm going to open this in the browser, and there is our div. So you can see what it looks like by the background color. So if I type into it, let's say here is some text. And I'm going to put a space after that. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to copy and paste it several times, and we're going to see what that looks like. So I'm going to reload here, and you can see how the text fills up at least the top left side, really the top, but from the left, of the div. All right, so that's without any kind of styling. So let me show you now what I'm talking about when I'm saying that we're going to learn some shorthand. So let's add some font styling to this. Now, up until now, we've learned several different kinds of font styles. For example, we have font family, and we can say maybe Garamond is a font family there. It's a serif font family, so I'm going to choose serif as the category. Then we can set the font size. I'm going to set the font size to let's say 14 point. Then I'm going to set the font weight to bold, and the font style to, let's see, whoops, that's the font stretch, sorry about that. Style, there we go, to italic. I will set the line height to, let's say, maybe 22 point. So you can see a little bit of spacing there. That's kind of like line spacing. And let's see, maybe do the font variant as well. Let's see, font variant, and that'll be small caps. All right, so I've just done several different font styles, 6 in all, and if I save that, and if we take a look at this, you'll see that it affects the text. here we go. You'll see that it is changed in size, the line height. It is small caps. It uses Garamond. It has bold and italic properties. So all of these things are things that I just did. But that's a lot of typing. There is actually a way in which you can replace all of that with a much more simple line of code. And that is simply to say font. Now, let me get rid of that. So font is a catch-all category. Here you can insert all of those other values. You can insert the style, the variant, the weight, the size, the line spacing, or the line height, and the family, all in one line. Now there's two which are required. If you don't use these two, then it won't work at all. And that is the font size. Let me set that at maybe, let's say 24 point, and the font family. And I'm going to say again, Garamond and comma serif. There we go. All right. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that there is no comma after the 24 point. There is a comma after Garamond. There's also an order. I have to put the size first and then the font family. Now, if I do that, I'm going to get rid of all these other ones. If I do that, and then we reload, you can see that I have changed, indeed, the font family and the font size. And I can demonstrate that by changing to a different font. I can choose, for example, Impact. And that actually is a sans serif. So let me put that in there. Here we go. And then I can reload, and you'll see that it'll become Impact. That looks terrible. Garamond is much more elegant. So I'm going to go back to that. There we go. But you can see that it only works. It only works if this and this are input. If I take away, for example, the 24 point, then Garamond will not work. You'll see that it's just normal Times New Roman. I could try to change this to Impact and save it and reload, and you'll see it doesn't work. So unless you have at least the font size and the font family, this line will not work. But if you've got those two, then you can add a lot of other stuff as well. For example, I could say italic, 24 point, Garamond serif, and we could go back here, and I could see it's become italic. There we go. I could add, let's say, small caps, and save that, and reload, and there it is in small caps. I can make it bold as well. I can say bold, and then I can go out and I can reload, and now it's bold. And I can do something else too. I can give line spacing. Now in order to do this, I should make it a smaller size, because otherwise we're going to break out of that box. So I just changed it to 12 point text. But after the text size, if you put a slash and then say 30 pixels, this is the line height. You have to put a slash after the font size, and the font size is required, so you're always going to have the font size. So after the font size, just put a slash and 30 pixels and reload, and there we have 30 pixels of line spacing. So this is a way that in one line you could do the same work as normally would take in 6 lines of CSS. So you can see that this saves a lot of time. Now the only ones that are required are the font size and the font family. Everything else is optional. You can take away italics, you can take away small caps. I'm going to do that. I don't like it very much, at least in this case. So you're going to take away bold. You can take away really the line height and the italic if you want, but here you can see that it works just fine right here. The only things you cannot take away are the font size and the font family. Those are required. So as long as you've got those, you can just add anything else. And so instead of typing 3, 4, or 6 lines of CSS, you can have just one line. So that's the shorthand for fonts. Now let's try borders. So for border, you've got actually a lot of different things you can do. You have, for example, the border width, which I'm going to set to 10 pixels. You have the border, let's see, border color, which I can set to, let's say, blue. And then you have the border style, which let's call it double. And now if I save that and reload, you can see that we now have a 10 pixel blue double border right there. Now that looks pretty ugly, as a matter of fact, but I'm just showing you that you could use 3 different border styles here. But there is a way to collapse that. Again, instead of using all those 3, we can use one called border. And here we could start with, for example, the width, and we could say it's maybe 2 pixels. We could do the style. I usually do the style second. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but it's probably a good idea. I'll say dotted. And then the color. Let's call it blue. And that's it. That's the shorthand. So instead of these 3 lines, you can do just that 1 line. And so that's what I'm going to do. Let's see here. There we go. I'm going to save that and reload. And here is our changed border. So that's shorthand for border. You can put the width in pixels, the style, which would be dash, dotted, solid, groove. There's a lot of different ones. And then the color. Just put those 3 things and you'll get it. Now if I want to, instead of blue, I could say the sharp 0000FF, which is the same as blue. Or to show you that I'm changing it, I could just say FF0000. That's red. So I'm going to save that, and it should turn red. There it is. Now I could also use RGB here. I could say RGB, and let's make this one green. So 0, 255, 0. That'll give us green. And so now if I save that and we reload it, you can see that we've got green as the border. So you can use any one of the color settings here. And as a matter of fact, you could use other measurements as well. I could say 2 centimeters, which is going to be a huge border. But let's see what happens. And there's my 2 centimeter border. A little much. Maybe millimeters would be more reasonable. Let's try that. And here's 2 millimeters. Or I could go back to pixels and I could say just 1 pixel. You can't get less than that. And reload. Whoops, excuse me. Save that and reload. And there you go. So I'm going to put this back to a, let's just make it a black border so that it's easier to see. There we go. And I'm going to make it solid as well because that's a little easier to see as well. Okay, so that's the kind of border that you might usually do, 1 pixel solid black. But that is the shorthand for borders. All right, so that's for borders. Now, how about other things? Well, you might notice that in our div here, the text is really, really close to the edge. And that's because we have not added padding. And so I'm going to add some padding to this. I'm going to say padding, and we should actually give it a top, bottom, left, and right. So I'm going to say padding top is going to be 20 pixels. I'm going to say the padding right is maybe 30 pixels. And I'm going to say the padding at the bottom is going to be 20 pixels again. And then I'm going to say that the padding on the left is going to be 30 pixels. There we go. So if I do that, I've now created padding on all 4 sides. The top is 20, the right is 30, bottom is 20, and the left is 30. So I should have 20 at the top and bottom, and 30 at the right and left. So if I save that, go back in here, we should have padding. There we go. So you can't really see the 20 versus the 30 pixels, but I can give a demonstration. I can go and I can change the left only to 60 pixels, make that really big. And by going over here, you can see how that changes it. There we go. You'll see that only the left side is grown. So what I've done is I've used 4 different styles to give different padding to the top, bottom, left, and right. Now you might ask, well, why didn't I just use padding by itself? Well, I could do that. But if I make the padding, say 30, oops, I should say 30 pixels, sorry, and then I reload, all four sides are 30. This is 30, this is 30, this is 30, this is 30 over here. So they're all four the same. If I make the padding 60, then all four, again, will be the same. And they'll all be 60. They'll all be much bigger. So I would like to have the top, bottom, left, and right, like I had right here, but I'd like to do that in just one line. So how can I do that? Well, there is a mnemonic for this, and I call it trouble. So the word trouble, if you spell it like that, has some key letters here. The key letters are TRBL. If you take out all the vowels, you're left with TRBL, and that's top, right, bottom, and left. And that's the order that you need to remember. It starts at the top and goes around clockwise, from the top to the right to the bottom and the left. And that's how the value should be. So if I say padding, now I can give these values right here. I don't have to say top, right, bottom, left. I can just give those values. So the top value is 20 pixels. The right padding is 30 pixels. The bottom padding is 20 pixels again. And the left padding is 60 pixels. There we go. And so this one line right here replaces these four lines. By putting the four numbers here, you can do the same thing as these four right there. So I'm going to get rid of these, and you'll see that it should work. So I'm going to save that and reload, and voila, there we go. So you can see that I have 60 on the left here, and I can change that. I can go over here and I can say instead, let's have maybe just 10 on the left. That'll be a very short one on the left. Remember, top, right, bottom, left, trouble. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go back here, and we should see this reduced to 10 pixels, and there it goes. This is still has the original value. This is 30 pixels at the top, 20 pixels on the right, and I'm sorry, 20 pixels on the top, 30 pixels on the right, and 20 pixels on the bottom. Okay, so you can change these as you like. I could put, for example, at the top, I could say it's 200 pixels. So this is the first one. So that's going to be the top padding. And here we go, there's 200 at the top. You can fool around with this, and you can see how changing these numbers affects it. Now, there are other ways to do this as well. This is with four numbers. You remember that if I use one number, that would be the setting for all four sides. But there's other ways to do it too. For example, I could say 20 pixels and 60 pixels. Now, this is just two numbers. Now, again, it starts with the top. So this number right here is actually top and bottom. And this one here is right and left. So again, you begin with the T. Whatever comes first is going to be the top. But if you have only two numbers, the first number will be the top and the bottom, and the second number will be the left and the right. Let me make the left and the right much bigger, 100 pixels, so you can see it clearly in the example. I'm going to save that, go back over here, and here you can see we've got a little bit of padding at the top, but we've got a lot, 100 pixels on the right and 100 pixels on the left. So if you have two numbers, that's what will happen. What if you have three numbers? Now, this is not going to be very visible because the text doesn't go all the way to the bottom, but let me just say 20 pixels at the bottom. And in this case, we'll have top and bottom and left and right. If you have three numbers, the first one will be top, the second one will be left and right, and the third one will be the bottom. So let's take a look at what that looks like, and basically it's the same thing. I didn't change the bottom at all, but what I could do, let me try to fill up this box with a little bit more text so it does become full. Let's try this, and I believe that should work. Now if we make the padding at the bottom much bigger, let's say 200, then you can see that we get 200 at the bottom. I'm going to change that back to 20 and make the padding at the top 200. Save that, and there we go. I'm going to change that again, and this time have it be 20 at the top and the bottom, but only maybe 1 pixel on the left and the right. So now we should see this spacing on the left and the right collapse, and sure enough, that's what happened. We just have 1 pixel of spacing on the left and 1 pixel on the right. So you can see that having 3 numbers is top, right, left, and bottom. So let me review that one more time. If you have one number in padding or actually also the margin or anything that has top, bottom, left, and right, if you just have one figure, one value, that'll be for all 4 sides. If you have 2 values, then the first value will be for the top and the bottom, and the second value will be for the right and the left. If you have 3 values, then the first will be for the top only, the second will be for the left and the right, and the third will be for the bottom only. And if you have all 4 together, if you have 4 values in there, then it'll be trouble again. You'll have T, R, B, L. Top, right, bottom, left. And that's how it works. That's the shorthand for anything that has 4 sides. Now we can do this with something else. For example, we can take the border, and instead of just having the color there, we can have border color. There we go. And here we can have 4 values, and I can say maybe blue, red, green, and let's say purple. And just to make this more visible, I'm going to make this 5 pixels thick. But you'll see here that the border tag now only has the width and the style. But we've brought up a separate border color style, and we've given it 4 different values: blue, red, green, purple. So this blue should be at the top, red should be at the right, green at the bottom, purple on the left. So if I save that and reload, sure enough, that's what we've got. Blue at the top, red on the right, green on the bottom, and purple on the left. Okay, so that's an overview of shorthand for fonts, borders, and padding. And again, you want to experiment with that. You'll want to make a div, or maybe a paragraph, or maybe a block quote, or anything that you want, and give it a try. Put some text in there, make some borders, use some padding. The shorthand that I showed you right here for padding is also good, by the way, for margins. So margins are the spacing outside of the box. You can do that as well. So just play around with it, experiment with it, use the 1 value, 2 values, 3 values, or 4 values, and see if you can get the hang of it, get to understand it, and more practice means it'll come more naturally, and that'll make it easier for you to write HTML and get a better grade in the class. And that's it for this lesson.